It's too late to save Joshimath, one of the most sacred towns, also strategically significant in the country. That is what experts are saying. I'm Barkha Dutt. You're with the Mojo story. Our focus today continues to be on the crisis that is unfolding in Uttarakhand. Not just Joshimath, but several other towns are now also showing homes that are heaving under cracks. Villagers are sleeping out in the cold in this bitter winter because they're too scared to be living in homes that they're scared will just fall and collapse. Several experts have told the Mojo story that what has happened in Joshimath is irreversible, that the signs and signals have been ignored, the warning signs and signals for not 1 year or 2 years, but actually for decades. That the very fact of how growth and development is thought of in the Himalayas is in fact the problem. Remember, since what has happened in Joshimath hit the headlines, three major projects have been temporarily halted. The hydropower project on the Dholi Ganga, the Hilang Pass that is being worked on by the Border Roads organization, and of course, the all weather widening of a road for the Char Dham pilgrimage. All of these three have been put on hold. Experts are now calling for a rethink on all of these projects. Joining us on the program today to actually discuss not just Joshimath, but what's happening in the Himalayas as a result of the growth model, the developmental model, climate change, and other human interventions or lack of interventions. Let's introduce our newsmaker on the program today, Sunita Narain, who of course leads the Center for Science and Environment, and as I said, is one of the most respected voices in the space of environment and conservation, is with us. Sunita, it's good to see you, but at a very, very unfortunate time. I've just got off a program where several very well-respected experts are talking about what's happening in Joshimath being irreversible. There is a larger crisis here, and that crisis is unfolding in the Himalayas. And I know you want to focus on that. So I want to start with your thoughts this evening about this crisis.
Barkha, you've summarized the issues very well. The fact is, it's not just about Joshimath. Of course, it is about Joshimath. It is about the people who are suffering today, who are losing their homes. But this is a story which is being told to us almost every year. And we are refusing, completely refusing to read the sign and the message that is being given. The Himalayas are the world's youngest mountain range. They are seismic. They are fragile. They are prone to erosion. And therefore, what everyone knows is that we do need development in the Himalayas, but it will have to be mindful of the ecology of the Himalayas. The problem is not the building of dams. The problem is not about the building of an individual road. The problem is the fact that we completely, it is mindless development that is happening in the Himalayas. Mindless because it refuses to recognize the particular ecology of the Himalayas. So it's arrogant. It's full of people who basically believe that they can re-engineer nature, they can dominate nature. And that is why every year, and you know the saga of the dams in the Himalayas, it is not about an individual dam, but it is about the fact that we have taken on dam construction in the Himalayas almost as it was a parking lot in GK2. And that's the crisis that we are seeing today.
I mean, I think that has to be the quote of the day, that the construction in the Himalayas or the development approach is almost as if it's a parking lot in GK2. You spoke of arrogance. Whose arrogance is this?
So let me give you some personal insight into this. I was a member of the B.K. Chaturvedi committee that was set up about a decade ago, because this whole issue of building the dams in the Himalayas has been a very controversial one. Now, if you look at the numbers, the engineers have come up with dams saying that we could do 70 odd structures on the length and breadth of the Ganga and its various tributaries, up to 9,000 megawatt. The engineers told the committee that building these dams would affect the river up to 80 to 90%, which meant that they were telling us that this would re-engineer the river. that they would take the water, because these are largely run-of-the-river projects, they would take the water, and at most times, the river would be dry. They talked about having a base load of 10%. Now, when this matter came to the committee, my basic argument was that it's not about dams, it's about building dams which are back to back in a fragile region. That you needed to mimic the river flow, you needed to respect the ecology, so that you would say you would leave 50% of the water flowing in the river, and that we humans would take use of the remaining 50%. So you would re-engineer your projects keeping in mind the Himalayas. And you would make sure that the people of the Himalayas, the development needs of the people of the Himalayas, their need for electricity, their need for livelihood would be first secured, because water and hydropower is definitely one of the economic benefits of the Himalayas. But you can't do it like this. You can't do these dams, as I said, back to back. At the end of it, I had to give a dissenting note to the committee. And I had to say very clearly, because the engineers, and here it was the arrogance of the engineers. And I actually wrote about how Roorkee University manipulated the figures to the committee, and I showed them how they had manipulated the data to show that these dams would be okay. And the point that I was making is, I'm not even saying don't build the dams, but I'm saying build the dams keeping in mind the ecology of the region. Now, this is where this particular project was one of the projects that was still not built, and it should have been cancelled. And the point was that the existing projects, by then 4,000 megawatt had been built, to say optimize on the energy needs from there. But that's what I'm talking about, the sheer arrogance, the sheer, the sense that we can dominate nature. It doesn't matter. What does it take? It takes a tunneling machine, and we will bore our way right through the Himalayas, as we do everywhere else. And it's so difficult. I mean, I cannot understand why these committees that are set up, committee after committee, and the dams in the Himalayas, the road building in the Himalayas, has been an issue on which there has been a lot of discussion. Why is it that our engineers, our technocrats don't speak truth to power? Why is it that they have got so locked into the system in which they really believe it's become this absolutely puerile debate of development versus environment? This is not about development versus environment. This is about senseless, mindless development, which is not development at all. And we can see the results in Joshimath. The fact of the matter is, today you have a very fragile region which is literally being rocked and blasted, and it is being torn apart. That, combined with climate change, which is going to lead to more and more extreme weather events, this is the result of Joshimath. It's not about one road, it's not about sewage, it's not about wastewater, it's about all of it.
So I want to go back to the committee that you leave, that you write a dissenting note from, you get into an argument with the engineers. What happens then after your dissenting note?
So the dams were built. There was a go-ahead for the hydroelectric projects, and they were again stopped by the Supreme Court, but then they were built again. So, this is what I'm saying. There's this huge pressure to keep pushing on what is seen to be this very simplistic model of development. What are we talking about, Barkha? We're talking about 4,000 megawatt of power. It's not as if we're talking about, enough power, the only source of power that we need in the country. We are talking about power generation that can be done through other sources as well. I am actually a proponent of hydropower. Please don't get me wrong. But I believe it has to be built keeping in mind the ecology, mitigating the adverse impacts, and most importantly, benefiting local people. Now, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with arguing for that? But that becomes a view to say, no, we can do these development. The Tapovan Vishnugarh project that you have just flashed is a project which has been going on for decades. It's been on the drawing board. It's been there. And yet, NTPC itself knows a year ago, one of its projects, you will remember, with a cloudburst, actually the rainy project had come down 2 years ago.
I actually went in 2021 to report that, and we have pictures of that, the Tapovan Vishnugad project, where more than 100 workers actually went missing, and their bodies were never retrieved. And if we can come out of this and actually show those pictures of the forgotten devastation of 2021, the cloudburst that takes place, the workers probably get trapped. And despite that, Sunita, here we are in 2023, and with a sense of deja vu. My question to you is, should this particular project be halted? Not temporarily, but permanently.
I think definitely this was one of, I can speak from the experience of the research I did in 2013 when I was a member of the committee. I went back to look at my notes, and this was one of the projects that was seen to be one project that should have never been built because it was not needed. It was a project, as I said, it's about the entire flow of the river. And if that flow of the river is already exhausted and saturated, you just can't build these projects. So yes, this project should be stopped. In fact, and this has happened many times, Barkha. The sad thing with I say this knowing that there has been a moratorium on these projects so many times, but every time that moratorium gets lifted and it's business as usual. I think, for once, and my real plea would be for once, let's understand what we are dealing with. These are the Himalayas. These are the most youngest, most fragile, seismic mountain range in the world, which need to be treated with respect. And that's what we are not doing. And respect means that you have to understand what nature, today you're literally seeing what I call the revenge of nature. And it's happening every 2 years, Barkha. This is not new at all. But every time it happens, we see it as a big tragedy, and we will evacuate the people. Some we will evacuate, others will have to lay there. And it'll be business as usual. And it's not a single project. This has to stop, but it's also about the fragility of the region and what else can you do? Can you make the buildings the way you are building? It's not just about the Joshimath, it's across the Himalayas. You have no building master plans. Whether it is Nainital or Joshimath, you have no building master plan that is in operation. You don't understand the carrying capacity of the region. You build on the floodplains in most cases. You have no sewage management that is happening. So when sewage is not managed, it sort of bores into the mountains, making it weaker itself. All this combined with road building, dam building, all of it is basically telling us this is a recipe for disaster. And it's time we understood the message that nature is giving us loud and clear again and again.
So you have said that this one particular hydropower project, the Tapovan Vishnugad project, should never have been approved. It should be stopped, but it's not about individual projects. But there are three sort of, at least two controversial projects. The Char Dham all-weather road widening, right? Of course, because it's a major pilgrimage route. But imagine Joshimath sinking. I don't know what impact that's going to happen on some of those yatras. Do you think that project should go ahead? It was inaugurated with much fanfare. What do you think of that?
Barkha, I really think that the experts who've looked into this should speak on this. I've never looked at that project. I can tell you again a personal research that I did. I was a member of the Amarnath Shrine Board. Yeah. And there also this issue was raised about having an all-weather road up to the shrine. And it was also raised to say that we needed to have, obviously, benefit of pilgrimage. But there was an understanding in the Amarnath Shrine Board that, again, you were dealing with, the Amarnath Shrine is at a glacier. It's at a very high height, again, very fragile mountains. And I think at that time, there was enough wisdom in the committee and in government to say, let's not plan on an all-weather road. Let's look at the carrying capacity of that area. Let's look at how better you could plan the sewage, the water supply, the management of waste by the pilgrims, so that you could actually make sure that the pilgrimage, which is so sacred, so important. And remember, for us, When you look at Hinduism, why is it that at the source of all rivers we are always got a temple? Because we understand that the source of life is where God resides there, and that the reason why these were always created was a way for us to protect them. They were like the sacred groves where we protected these areas to say this is the pilgrimage site, so that we would make sure that as Hindus we understood the significance of life. And the jatas of Shiv are such an important sort of symbolism of the forests of the Himalayas, and so they make sure that they hold the water, and that's why the river flows slowly. But we have to go back to that pilgrimage is because it is the source of life, and that source of life has to be treated, as I keep saying, with the respect that it deserves. And
Yeah.
I think that's why I don't have anything to say about the Char Dham. I know that many people have looked into it, and that research needs. My problem is not whether it should be built or not. My problem is, what was the process of decision making? And I think that's where we are failing, that we are not taking into account all the issues, and we don't take them into account because we really come to this whole discussion with a sort of sledgehammer that says, oh, we believe it should be done, and anybody who says it shouldn't is really a naysayer. But the fact is, you can only have a discussion when both sides have a chance to put the facts on the table, and that needs to be evaluated scientifically. I can tell you my experience when I was on this committee, and you know me, I call a spade a spade. I showed the Rirki University how they had fudged the data, which they presented to the committee. And I wrote about it. And I was absolutely appalled to see that these are the scientific experts who will do anything to make sure that they can produce results which are in favor of the argument that they would like to see succeed. Now, that's not the way decision making should happen. And I think what we are seeing today is a real crisis of decision making in the country.
Finally, therefore, given this crisis of decision making, given that you actually have experts, as you cited I'm not saying all experts are like that, but you certainly experienced Roorkee University.
My experience.
Yes, absolutely. What should happen now? One is an overall paradigm shift, but that we've been asking for. Some of us have been asking for it for years, and it doesn't happen. You're in fact called anti-development. You're called a leftist, even if we're capitalist, but may believe that all growth models cannot be replicated in all parts of the country. What should and can happen now, realistically, Sunita? Last word to you.
I think, Barkha, very serious evaluation. This is a wake-up call. I was happy to see that the Prime Minister's office has called a meeting on this issue. They have called a lot of experts. They want to understand what to do. And I really believe that this is a time when we don't look for, we don't just look at it as a temporary, as a local problem, that we take very hard decisions now when it comes to Joshimath, and if it means cancelling the project, it is cancelled, because that's what is needed today. But this is why, for me, the issue is that decision making that gets taken, so that it understands the severity of it, and it doesn't allow. And this is really the technocratic engineering view. I'm not blaming the politicians here. I'm really talking about that engineering technocratic view to say we can fix it. We can fix everything because we know how to manage and dominate nature. And I think that's really what I hope that this committee that has been this review by the Prime Minister's office will take some hard decisions, and I'm sure they will.
Thank you, Sunita. I mean, it's just tragic that it takes a crisis and a potential tragedy of this proportion for us to revisit this. It was only in 2021 when we had a crisis strike at exactly the same spot of the project that is now back in the headlines. But if this doesn't wake all of us up, I don't know what will. It will be quite literally a Himalayan blunder in the Himalayas. Thank you very much for, as always, not pulling your punches. A pleasure talking to you and learned a lot from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Barkha.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.